Imagine a world where a nation's military squares off against emus. Yes, you heard that right, emus. Picture the year 1932 down under Australia, a time of recovery post the Great War. Now add to this scene a horde of 2,000 flightless birds, emus, migrating into human territory. Seems absurd, doesn't it? But believe it or not, this is a true tale from history, a story of feathers and folly. This is not just about a flock of emus causing havoc. It's about desperation, surprising decisions, and the unpredictable nature of conflicts. It's about a military expedition led by Major G.P.W. Meredith, armed with Lewis guns, against these unsuspecting birds. It's about a struggle that was far from ordinary, a struggle that echoed across the vast Australian outback, so buckle up. This journey through history is going to be a wild ride. Our story begins in the aftermath of the First World War, a time of immense global change. In Australia, the echoes of war were still reverberating through society, and the nation was in the process of healing and rebuilding. One of the initiatives to support this recovery was the allocation of farmland to war veterans. This was a well-intentioned move, aiming to provide a livelihood for returning soldiers and boost the country's agricultural sector. These veterans, known as soldier settlers, were given plots of land, primarily in Western Australia. It was a vast, sun-drenched landscape, ideal for wheat cultivation. However, life on the farm was far from easy. The veterans were not experienced farmers, and they faced the challenges of harsh weather conditions and fluctuating wheat prices, but the most unexpected problem was about to unfold. Enter the emus. These large, flightless birds are native to Australia and are known for their resilience and adaptability. They typically inhabit coastal regions, but in the 1930s something changed. Driven by a search for food and water, the emus began migrating inland. Their journey led them to the newly established farmlands. The emus found the cultivated lands to be a veritable feast. Fields of wheat stretched as far as the eye could see, providing abundant food and water. For the emus, it was paradise. For the farmers, it was a disaster. Thousands of emus descended upon the farmland, consuming crops and leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The farmers watched helplessly as their hard work was decimated by the feathered invaders. They needed help, and they turned to the one place they thought could provide it, the government. The farmers' plea for assistance reached the ears of the Australian government, sparking a series of events that would lead to one of the most peculiar conflicts in history. And thus the stage was set for an unlikely conflict. Now, imagine thousands of emus descending on your farmland. This was the reality for Australian farmers in the early 1930s. These flightless birds, native to Australia, are known for their adaptive nature and resilience. But as they migrated into the agricultural regions, their survival instincts turned into a nightmare for the farming community. As the emus arrived in droves, they found a buffet of cultivated crops, stretching as far as the eye could see. In their wake, they left a trail of destruction, decimating the farmers' hard-earned produce. With a single emu capable of consuming approximately 1.5 kilograms of wheat per day, their combined impact was colossal. It was a spectacle of nature, albeit a devastating one, with the emus appearing as an unstoppable force, driven by their instinctual need to feed and survive. The farmers, many of whom were veterans of the Great War, found themselves in a battle they were ill-equipped to fight. Their enemy was not a foreign power, but rather the very land they called home, now overrun by these feathered invaders. It was a war of attrition, a struggle for survival, with the emus threatening the livelihoods of these hard-working individuals. Desperation set in. The farmers had neither the resources nor the manpower to combat this unexpected enemy. Their pleas for help echoed through the vast Australian outback, reaching the ears of those in power. It was a call to arms, not against a human adversary, but against an avian onslaught that seemed to have no end. The farmers, in their desperation, turned to the government for aid. It was a plea for assistance, a cry for relief from a foe that was as relentless as it was unpredictable. The emu invasion was a threat like no other, a challenge that demanded an unprecedented response. Faced with a feathered foe, the farmers turned to the government for aid. It was a plea that would set the stage for one of history's most unusual conflicts, a war not against nations, but against nature itself. The Great Emu War was about to begin. In response, the government made an unusual decision, one that has since become a tale of feathers and folly. They deployed military forces to tackle the burgeoning emu problem. Yes, you heard it right. The military, armed to the teeth, was sent to engage in a conflict with a troop of flightless birds. Leading the charge was Major G.P.W. Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery. Meredith and his men were armed with Lewis guns, a type of light machine gun that had seen action in the trenches of the First World War. Now, these guns were directed towards a new enemy, the emus, who were decimating the Australian farmland. The initial encounters between the military and the emus were, to put it mildly, a spectacle. The soldiers, trained for human combat, found themselves in unfamiliar territory. Their foe was not an enemy soldier, but a bird, unpredictable, fast, and surprisingly resilient. The emus scattered in all directions, their unpredictable movements making them difficult targets. The Australian terrain, vast and rugged, posed another challenge for the military. The emus, perfectly adapted to their environment, could easily navigate the landscape. The soldiers, on the other hand, struggled to keep up, their heavy equipment and lack of local knowledge hindering their pursuit. To add to the military's woes, the emus proved to be tough opponents. Despite being hit, many birds would continue running, their sturdy bodies able to withstand the impact of the bullets. Reports even emerged of birds carrying injuries, still leading their packs, a testament to their resilience. The military's efforts, however, were largely in vain. Their tactics and strategies, effective in human warfare, were proving ineffective against the emus. The birds' natural advantages, combined with the challenging terrain, had created a formidable opponent that the military was ill-prepared to combat. But the emus were not to be underestimated. This was not a battle against a conventional enemy. This was a conflict against nature, and nature, as they were about to discover, is an opponent unlike any other. Despite their initial setbacks, the military pressed on, determined to quell the feathery invaders. Major Meredith, undeterred by the emus' resilience, devised new strategies to counter their uncanny ability to evade capture. He deployed his men in a line formation, hoping to drive the emus into a killing zone. Yet the Australian terrain played spoilsport, its vast expanses and undulating topography providing ample room for the birds to scatter and escape. Undaunted, the military shifted to guerrilla tactics. Small units lay in wait, springing ambushes on unsuspecting emu groups. The element of surprise, they hoped, would finally tip the scales in their favor, but even this proved futile. The emus, with their keen senses and swift legs, often managed to evade the ambushes, leaving the soldiers to stare at clouds of dust and a scattering of feathers. Even the Lewis guns, the military's trusted weapon, proved ineffective against the emus' natural armor. The bullets often failed to penetrate the thick layer of feathers and tough skin, adding another notch to the emus' list of surprising advantages. As the days turned into weeks, the military found themselves in a stalemate. Despite their best efforts and strategic maneuvers, the emus remained a formidable foe, their numbers seemingly undiminished. The soldiers, once confident of a swift victory, were now facing an uncomfortable truth. The emus, it seemed, were winning the war. In the end, the military was withdrawn and the emus remained as resilient and relentless as ever. Shaking off the dust of defeat, the Australian government was forced to reassess their approach, with public scrutiny adding a layer of urgency to their decision-making. The aftermath of the Great Emu War saw a shift from military action to more practical, sustainable measures. Bounty systems were introduced, incentivizing locals to hunt the emus, leading to a significant reduction in their population. Additionally, the government invested in the construction of robust fencing, an effective barrier that protected the valuable farmlands from the emus' voracious appetites. Public sentiment surrounding the campaign was a mixed bag. Some found humor in the situation, while others criticized the government's decision to wage a war against nature, questioning the wisdom and efficacy of such an endeavor. As we reflect on this unusual conflict, several lessons stand out. The Great Emu War underscores the unpredictability of nature and the folly of underestimating its resilience. It highlights the importance of understanding our environment and finding sustainable solutions to coexist with it. It reminds us that sometimes the most unconventional stories from our past can offer profound insights into our present and future. Thus ended the Great Emu War, a tale of feathers, folly, and the unpredictability of nature. Please subscribe and comment for more content.